The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor, and before I could process what was happening, my sister-in-law's hand connected with my face. The slap echoed through the country club's reception hall, and suddenly, the low murmur of conversation died completely. 83 mourners at my husband's funeral reception stood frozen, watching as Denise Hayes grabbed the collar of my black dress and screamed, "You don't deserve that beach house. You couldn't even give my brother children, and now you're going to steal his family's legacy?" I tasted blood from where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. But it wasn't the physical pain that made my knees weak. It was the look on my brother-in-law Marcus's face as he stood there 5 feet away and did absolutely nothing. Let me back up. My name is Victoria Hayes. I'm 64 years old, and 3 weeks ago I became a widow when my husband Richard died of a heart attack at 66. We'd been married for 18 years. They were the happiest 18 years of my life. Richard was a high school history teacher. I was a librarian at the county library for 37 years before I retired last year. We lived simply. Our house was a modest 2-bedroom ranch in a quiet neighborhood. I drove a 12-year-old Toyota Camry. Richard drove a 10-year-old Ford pickup. We shopped at discount stores, clipped coupons, and our idea of splurging was dinner at the local Italian restaurant on our anniversary. But we also had the beach house. Richard's parents had bought it back in Motngin Chin Chumbe Muelam, when the little coastal town of Seabrook was still just a fishing village. It was a small 2-bedroom cottage then, nothing fancy. Over the years, Seabrook transformed into an upscale resort town. The cottage was now surrounded by million-dollar properties. Richard's father had passed away when Richard was 30, and his mother lived in the beach house until she died 10 years ago, leaving it to Richard. Here's what made everything complicated. Richard had 2 siblings, his older sister Denise and his younger brother Marcus. When their mother died, the will was clear. The beach house went to Richard. Period. There was no provision for splitting it, no requirement to sell it and divide the money. Just Richard. Denise had been furious. She'd hired a lawyer to contest the will, claiming their mother hadn't been of sound mind. The case was thrown out. Their mother's will had been drafted by one of the most respected estate attorneys in the state, and she'd been examined by 2 doctors who confirmed her mental competency just weeks before her death. But Denise never let it go. For 10 years, she'd made snide comments. "Must be nice, having a $1 million vacation home. Some of us have to actually work for our beach trips." Mom always did love Richard best. The truth was more complicated. Their mother had given Denise and Marcus substantial gifts over the years to help them. Denise got $50,000 for a down payment on her house. Marcus got $40,000 to start his business. Richard never got those kinds of gifts because he never asked. And when their mother died, there was barely anything left, except the beach house and about $30,000 in her savings account, which was split 3 ways. Richard and I went to the beach house maybe 4 times a year. We didn't rent it out. We didn't show it off. We just had it. It was our quiet place, our sanctuary. We'd spend weekends there, walking on the beach, reading on the deck, cooking simple meals. It was never about the money or the status. It was about having a place that felt like Richard's childhood, like his parents' love still lived in those walls. Now Richard was gone, and I was standing in the country club where we'd celebrated our wedding reception 18 years ago, except this time it was his funeral. The service had been that morning. I'd held myself together through the eulogy, through the hymns, through the endless line of people offering condolences. My sister had flown in from Seattle. My best friend Margaret had been by my side, but Richard's family? That was a different story. Denise had arrived late, making a dramatic entrance in head-to-toe designer black. Her husband Preston, a real estate developer, looked uncomfortable in his expensive suit. Their 2 children, Brandon and Heather, both in their 20s, had barely acknowledged me. Marcus had come with his wife Linda and their teenage son Josh. At least Linda had hugged me, and Marcus had mumbled something about being sorry. That was more than I got from Denise. The reception was supposed to be a quiet affair, light refreshments, a chance for people to share memories, and then everyone would go home. I'd planned to spend the evening with my sister, finally allowing myself to break down in private. But Denise had other plans. It started during the reception when she cornered me by the buffet table. "Victoria, we need to talk about the beach house," she said, not even bothering with pleasantries. "Denise, this isn't the time," I replied quietly, very aware of the people around us. "When is the time? You're going to keep avoiding this conversation forever?" Her voice was getting louder. People were starting to look. "I'm not avoiding anything. But we just buried Richard this morning. Can we please have this conversation later? The house is worth at least $2 million now, probably more. You're living in that little ranch house, driving that piece of junk car. You don't need a beach property. It should go to the family. Richard's real family." That stung. Real family. As if 18 years of marriage meant nothing. As if the fact that Richard and I couldn't have children somehow made me less than. We'd tried for years. 3 rounds of IVF, 2 miscarriages. The second one nearly killed me, literally. I'd hemorrhaged so badly that I needed an emergency hysterectomy at 48. Richard had held my hand through all of it, and he never once made me feel like I'd failed him. He'd said our life together was enough, that we didn't need children to be a complete family. But Denise had never let me forget. Every family gathering, she'd make some comment. "Oh, you wouldn't understand, Victoria. You're not a mother. It's different when you have kids. Some women just aren't meant to be mothers, I guess." "Denise, I'm not having this conversation right now," I said firmly, and I turned to walk away. That's when she grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare walk away from me. That house belonged to my mother. It should have been split 3 ways from the beginning. You're just some woman Richard married late in life. You have no real claim to our family's property." I pulled my arm free. "Your mother left the house to Richard. It's now part of Richard's estate, which means it's mine. That's what marriage means. Now please, let me go." Preston appeared at Denise's elbow. "Honey, maybe we should—" "Don't honey me," Denise snapped at him. Then she turned back to me, and her voice got even louder. "You need to do the right thing here, Victoria. Sell the house. Split the money 3 ways. Marcus and I have children to think about. We have college tuitions, weddings, futures to plan for. What do you need $2 million for? You're alone now. You don't have any heirs." The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. "The house is not for sale," I said, and I walked toward the exit. That's when Denise ran after me. She actually ran, her heels clicking on the marble floor, and she grabbed my purse right off my shoulder. The champagne flute I'd been holding fell to the floor and shattered. "What are you doing?" I gasped. "Where's the deed? Is it in here?" She was opening my purse, dumping the contents onto a nearby table. My wallet, my phone, my keys, tissues, Richard's reading glasses that I'd carried in there since he died because I couldn't bear to leave them at home. "Denise, stop." She found my wallet and started pulling out cards. "Where do you keep important documents? There has to be something in here about the house." That's when I grabbed her wrist. "Give me my wallet back." She yanked it away, and the motion made her stumble backward. Some of the guests gasped. Preston moved forward, but Marcus grabbed his arm, holding him back. "Why?" "I'll never know." Denise regained her balance and turned back to me, her face red with fury. "You selfish Baron." The slap came out of nowhere. Her hand connected with my cheek so hard that I saw stars. The sound echoed through the silent hall. I stood there, shocked, my hand going to my burning face. Denise was breathing hard, her eyes wild. "You don't deserve anything Richard had. You were just someone he settled for. And now you're going to take everything from his real family?" My sister Margaret appeared at my side. "That's enough. We're calling the police." "Go ahead," Denise spat. "Call them. Tell them how this woman is stealing from Richard's family." "She assaulted Victoria," Margaret said, her voice shaking with anger. "I barely touched her," Denise scoffed. Marcus finally spoke up. "Denise, you need to calm down." "Don't tell me to calm down," she screamed at her brother. "You're just going to let her take everything? Mom's house? The house we spent every summer in as kids? You're fine with some outsider having it?" I looked at Marcus. His face was pale. Linda was pulling on his arm, whispering urgently. Their son Josh looked horrified. "I think you should leave," I said quietly to Denise. My cheek was throbbing, and I could feel it starting to swell. "I'm not going anywhere. Someone needs to stand up to you." That's when Margaret pulled out her phone. "I'm calling the police. Victoria, you need to press charges." "Wait," I said. Everyone looked at me. I took a deep breath, tasting the blood in my mouth again. "I'm going to leave. This is Richard's funeral reception, and I won't have it turn into a circus." "But Denise, I want you to know something. You just assaulted me in front of 83 witnesses, and you did it because you want my property. That's not going to end well for you." I picked up my purse from where it had fallen, gathered my scattered belongings, and turned to leave. "Running away?" Denise called after me. "That's what I thought. You know I'm right. You know you should give us the house." I didn't respond. I just walked out of the country club with Margaret at my side. In the parking lot, Margaret hugged me. "Vic, you're shaking. We need to call the police. We need to document this." "I will," I said. "But first, I need to make a different call." "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a number I'd saved just last week. I took a deep breath and pressed call. "Thompson and Associates," a professional voice answered. "This is Victoria Hayes. I need to speak with attorney Michael Thompson. Tell him it's time to execute the plan we discussed last week." "One moment, please." Margaret was staring at me. "Victoria, what's going on?" Michael Thompson came on the line. "Mrs. Hayes, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry to hear that things have escalated. Are you safe?" "Yes, I'm in the parking lot. My sister is with me." "And the incident occurred as you predicted. Worse. She assaulted me in front of all the funeral guests." There was a pause. "That changes things. Mrs. Hayes, I need you to call the police immediately and report the assault. I'll meet you at the police station in 30 minutes. And then, with your permission, I'd like to return to the country club and have a conversation with your sister-in-law." "You have my permission. Thank you, Michael." I hung up and looked at Margaret. "I need to explain some things to you." We sat in my old Camry while I told her everything. The beach house? I'd bought it from Richard's mother 11 years ago, 2 years before she died. She'd come to us privately, embarrassed. She'd made some bad investments, trusted the wrong financial advisor. She was looking at losing the house. Richard had been devastated. We didn't have the money to help her, not on our salaries. Except I did. My father had died when I was 24, before I'd even met Richard. He'd left me a modest inheritance, about $150,000. I'd invested it conservatively, left it alone, let it grow. By the time Richard's mother needed help, that inheritance had grown to $400,000. I'd bought the beach house from her for its market value at the time, $320,000. We'd kept it quiet because Richard's mother was embarrassed. She didn't want Denise and Marcus to know she'd had financial troubles. We'd structured it so that she could live there for the rest of her life. No rent, and she'd have enough money left over to live comfortably. When she died, the house was already mine. But her will still said the beach house goes to Richard because technically, I'd put it in both our names. It was our private way of honoring her wishes while protecting her dignity. But there was more. After I retired last year, I'd gotten bored. I'd started doing something I'd always wanted to do, investing in the stock market, learning about financial planning. It turned out I had a knack for it. That remaining $80,000 from my father's inheritance, I'd turned it into almost $900,000 over the past year. Between the beach house and my investment portfolio, I was worth over $2.5 million. Richard had known everything. He'd been so proud of me, so supportive, but we'd agreed to keep living simply, to not change our lifestyle. We didn't need a fancy car, or designer clothes, or exotic vacations. We had each other, and that was enough. After Richard died, I'd met with Michael Thompson, one of the best estate attorneys in the state. We discussed the possibility that Denise might contest Richard's will or make trouble. Michael had advised me to document everything, to be prepared. I just hadn't expected her to assault me at the funeral. Margaret sat in silence after I finished talking. Then she laughed. "Vic, you're secretly rich?" "Don't say it like that. I've been careful with money. I've been lucky with investments. Does Denise know any of this?" No one knows except you, Richard, and Michael Thompson. She thinks you're poor. She thinks you're some struggling widow who doesn't deserve the beach house. Yes. Oh, this is going to be good, Margaret said. Then her expression turned serious. But Vic, she assaulted you. Are you really okay? My cheek was swelling, and my pride was bruised, but I nodded. I'm okay, and I'm ready to fight back. Come on, let's go to the police station. The police took my statement, took photos of my swollen cheek and split lip. 3 of the funeral guests had already called it in, which helped my case. The officer told me I had enough evidence to press charges for assault, and I did. They said they'd send an officer to talk to Denise. While we were at the police station, Michael Thompson called. Mrs. Hayes, I'm at the country club now. Most of the guests have left, but your sister-in-law is still here. She's with her husband and your brother-in-law. I've introduced myself as your attorney. I'd like your permission to have a frank conversation with them about the beach house and your husband's estate. Go ahead, I said. And Mrs. Hayes? I'm going to need to reveal some of the financial information we discussed. Are you comfortable with that? I thought about Denise's face as she'd slapped me. I thought about her calling me barren, saying I wasn't real family. I thought about 18 years of subtle and not-so-subtle insults. Yes. Tell them everything. Understood. I'll call you in an hour. Margaret drove me home. My sister Rachel was there, having left the reception early with her husband. She was horrified when she saw my face. We put ice on it, and I told her the whole story. I never liked Denise, Rachel said. Always thought she was a piece of work. But this is beyond the pale. My phone rang. Michael Thompson. Mrs. Hayes, I've just finished speaking with your in-laws. I think you'll want to hear this. Put me on speaker, please. My sisters are here with me. Of course. So I sat down with Denise, Preston, Marcus, and Linda. I explained that I represented you and that I was there to discuss your late husband's estate. Denise immediately started demanding information about the beach house. She claimed she had a right to it as Richard's sister, and I informed her that the beach house is not part of Richard's estate. It never was. You purchased it from Richard's mother 11 years ago. I provided documentation. The deed is in your name. It was your property before Richard died, and it's your property now. What did she say? She turned white. Then she turned red. Then she accused you of manipulating Richard's mother. I explained that the transaction was handled by a reputable real estate attorney and that Richard's mother was of sound mind and actually came to you for help when she was facing financial difficulties. And then she demanded to know how you, as a librarian, had the money to buy a beach house. I explained that you had an inheritance from your father and that you'd invested it wisely. I also informed her that over the past year, you've built a substantial investment portfolio and that your current net worth is approximately $2.6 million. I heard Rachel gasp. I also informed her that pressing charges for assault probably wasn't in her best interests, given that there were multiple witnesses. And I mentioned that Richard's will does include a provision about his life insurance policy and his pension benefits, which total about $500,000 combined. I didn't know Richard had that much in life insurance, I said. He increased it 5 years ago. He wanted to make sure you'd be taken care of. However, Mrs. Hayes, there's something you need to know about the will. Richard included a clause. He left small bequests to Marcus and Denise, $50,000 each, on the condition that they treat you with respect and dignity after his passing. The will specifically states that any family member who harasses you, threatens you, or makes false claims about his estate will forfeit their bequest. He did that. Yes. He apparently had concerns about how his siblings might react. Given what happened today, I informed Denise and Marcus that Denise has forfeited her $50,000. The assault in front of witnesses, the grabbing of your personal property, and the false claims about the beach house constitute a clear violation of the will's terms. Oh my God, I whispered. Preston, her husband, was furious with her. Marcus was very quiet, but Linda spoke up. She apologized profusely on Denise's behalf and said she'd been telling Marcus for years that his sister's behavior toward you was unacceptable. What about Marcus? Does he lose his $50,000 too? No. The clause is specific to individual behavior. Marcus didn't participate in the assault or the harassment. He'll still receive his bequest. However, I strongly suggested that he consider the company he keeps, specifically his sister's influence on family matters. Is Denise there? Can I speak to her? She left about 10 minutes ago. She was quite upset. Preston stayed behind to apologize to me, which I found interesting. He said, and I quote, "My wife has been obsessing about that beach house for a decade. I told her to let it go, but she wouldn't listen. Now she's cost us $50,000 and probably going to face assault charges. I'm done making excuses for her." Wow. Mrs. Hayes, there's one more thing. Your brother-in-law Marcus asked if he could speak with you at some point. Not today, obviously, but soon. He said he wanted to apologize for not standing up to his sister. Would you be open to that? I thought about Marcus's pale face at the reception, the way he'd stood there while his sister attacked me. But I also remembered 19 years of Thanksgivings and Christmases, of Marcus being kind in his quiet way, of his wife Linda always making an effort to include me. "Yes," I said, "tell him he can call me next week." "I will." And Mrs. Hayes? For what it's worth, Richard spoke to me several times over the years. He was very concerned about protecting you from his family's drama. The man loved you deeply. Tears filled my eyes. Thank you, Michael. After I hung up, my sisters and I sat in silence for a moment. Then Rachel said, "So you're rich." "I'm comfortable," I corrected. "And Denise just lost $50,000 because she couldn't keep her hands to herself." "Apparently. Good. She deserves it. But Vic, what are you going to do now?" That was the question, wasn't it? I had a beach house I loved, a portfolio worth millions, and no children to leave it to. I had a sister-in-law who hated me, and a brother-in-law who wanted to apologize. I had a whole life ahead of me without Richard, and I wasn't sure what it should look like. "I'm going to press charges," I said finally. "And then I'm going to do something good with this money." Over the next 2 weeks, things happened quickly. Denise was charged with assault. With all the witnesses, her lawyer advised her to take a plea deal, anger management classes, a fine, and a restraining order. She had to stay at least 500 feet away from me at all times. Preston filed for divorce. Apparently, the assault was the last straw in a marriage that had been troubled for years. Brandon and Heather, Denise's kids, reached out to apologize. Heather sent me a long email explaining that she'd always thought her mother's obsession with the beach house was unhealthy, and she was sorry for not speaking up. Marcus came to visit me 3 weeks after the funeral. We sat on my back porch with iced tea, and he cried as he apologized. "I should have stopped her," he said. "I should have stood up to her years ago. Denise has always been." He searched for the word, difficult. Even when we were kids, she was jealous of Richard. Mom tried to treat us all equally, but Richard was the easiest. You know, he didn't ask for things. He didn't make demands. So Mom felt comfortable leaving him the beach house because she knew he wouldn't fight with us about it. "She told me that once," I said, "when I bought the house from her. She said Richard had never asked her for anything, and that's why she wanted him to have the house. She knew he'd appreciate it." "Denise asked for everything," Marcus continued. "Money for the house, money for cars, money for the kids' private schools. And Preston makes good money, but they spend it all. They live beyond their means. Always have. The beach house represented money to her. It always has." "What about you, Marcus? How did you feel about the house going to Richard?" He was quiet for a moment. "Honestly, I was fine with it. Linda and I prefer the mountains anyway. And Mom helped us when we needed it. She gave us money to start my business. We've done well. We don't need Richard's house." "But you didn't stop Denise that day." "No, I didn't. And I hate myself for it. I was afraid. Isn't that pathetic? A 58-year-old man, afraid of his older sister. But that's the dynamic we grew up with. Denise yells, and everyone backs down. It's been that way our whole lives. But watching her hit you? Victoria, I'll never forgive myself. Your family. You were Richard's wife. You made him so happy." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "I appreciate you saying that. Linda wanted to come with me today, but I asked her to let me do this alone. She wants you to know that you're welcome at our house anytime. And Josh, our son, he was really upset about what happened. He's been talking about respect and how adults should behave. I think seeing his aunt assault someone at a funeral really shook him. We talked for another hour. Marcus told me stories about Richard as a kid, things I'd never heard. I told him about my investment portfolio and my plans for the money. He was impressed, not greedy. He didn't ask for anything, he just listened. "You know what I think?" he said finally. "I think Richard knew you'd be okay. He knew you were stronger and smarter than anyone gave you credit for. That's why he loved you." When Marcus left, I felt lighter somehow. I couldn't forgive Denise, probably never would. But Marcus and I had mended our relationship, and that felt important. The following month, I made some decisions. I kept the beach house. I started renting it out occasionally, not for the money, but because Richard would have wanted people to enjoy it. I partnered with a local nonprofit that provides affordable beach vacations for families dealing with serious illnesses. Half the rental calendar is reserved for them at a deeply discounted rate. I took $100,000 from my portfolio and started a scholarship fund at the local high school in Richard's name. It's for students who want to become teachers. Richard always said teaching was the most important job in the world. I volunteered at the library 3 days a week, helping people learn financial literacy. It turns out a lot of people don't know the basics about investing, saving, or managing money. I taught free classes. People started calling me the money lady. I kind of loved it. And I stayed in my modest ranch house with my old Camry. Because here's what I learned from all of this. Visible wealth attracts problems. Invisible wealth gives you power. Denise had spent her whole life chasing visible wealth. Designer clothes, luxury cars, a house bigger than she needed. She was always broke because she was always trying to impress people. And when she thought I had something valuable, she felt entitled to it. But I'd built invisible wealth. Money that no one knew about. Investments that grew quietly. A life that looked simple on the outside, but was rich in all the ways that mattered. I had security. I had options. I had power. Richard used to quote a line from a poem, "The quietest people have the loudest minds." That was us. We lived quietly, but we lived rich. Not in money, though I had that too. But rich in love, in peace, in knowing that our worth wasn't tied to what we owned or what we showed the world. I'm 64 years old. I'm a widow. I don't have children, but I have a life full of purpose. I have a community I serve. I have wealth that I use to make a difference. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when someone tried to take what was mine, I didn't back down. Denise lost her $50,000, her marriage, and her dignity. I kept my beach house, my peace of mind, and my power. That's the difference between visible and invisible wealth. One makes you a target, the other makes you strong. And every time I sit on the deck of the beach house, watching the waves roll in, I think about Richard. I think about how he protected me with that clause in his will, how he knew his family better than anyone. I think about how he lived simply but loved deeply. And I smile, because I know that wherever he is, he's proud of me, not because I have money, but because I stood up for myself, because I didn't let them take what was mine, because I used our life together and the security it gave me to help other people. That's what invisible wealth really is. It's not about hiding your money. It's about knowing your value doesn't come from what other people see. It comes from what you know about yourself, what you've built, and what you choose to do with it. I learned that lesson the hard way, standing in a country club reception hall with my face burning from my sister-in-law's slap, but I learned it, and now I'm teaching it to others, because someone needs to tell the truth about wealth, about family, about power. Someone needs to say that you don't have to show off to be successful. You don't have to announce your worth to have it. You don't have to prove anything to anyone. Live quietly, build steadily, love deeply. And when someone tries to take what's yours, stand firm. That's the lesson Richard taught me. That's the lesson his death and his sister's attack reinforced. And that's the lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my days.